man called Ramses II, the Great, ascended the throne around 1279 BC and ruled for about 66 years. During those decades, Egypt's reach, its monuments, and its narrative extended farther and higher than nearly any other period in its long history. The nation rose on war campaigns, state-building, diplomacy, but also on the backs of the many quarry laborers, captured warriors, Nubian subjects, and also Egyptian peasants. Ramses II embarked on military campaigns into Nubia, into Libya and the Levant. He reportedly commanded an army of tens of thousands. In one temple relief at Beit el-Wali, he is shown charging into battle in a war chariot, with his sons behind him. The message was clear: the pharaoh as warrior god, and the nation as dominant. Internally, Egypt enjoyed political stability and great building capacity under his reign. But, behind that facade, let us consider the voices left out of the inscriptions. A Nubian man, age about 20, captured after a skirmish south of the First Cataract. The Egyptians record living prisoners, brought off for the king. That young man's life becomes a footnote on stone walls describing the king's victory, though he is not named. His body may have worked quarry stone, built fortifications, carried loads under the desert sun until his arms failed, his knees gave way, his spirit bent. Also, imagine the Egyptian peasant, year after year paying taxes, not simply in grain but in labor, being conscripted for temple building, state projects, and forced to haul heavy stone blocks. One study states that taxation was heavy and enforced state servitude by peasant workers in all areas of the economy. Ramses II's building spree includes temples at Abu Simbel, at the Ramesseum, and countless statues of himself across Egypt, but these monuments served a purpose. Worship, yes, but also propaganda. They told the people, our king is divine, our state is eternal, and our value is in stone. So, the culture that emerges worships the ruler, not the ruled. Also, understand that this model of power has endured. The centralized king and the spectacle of greatness sometimes conceals the cost of creation. On the religious front, Ramses reinforced the pharaoh's role as mediator of gods and humans. Temples, priests, and cults were all instruments of state. The pharaoh is not simply a political ruler, he is divine. And that theology meant to question him was to question the cosmic order. And for the enslaved, for the taxed, for the laborer beneath the stone, the reality was quite different.
In 1881, archaeologists discovered the body of Ramses II, who was the most powerful pharaoh in ancient Egypt. His body is over 3,000 years old, but it is the most preserved body in the whole entire world. You can see his skin, his hair, you can even see the shape of his mouth and his nose. It's crazy. Scientists even today are baffled at how this is even possible. In Paris 1975, Dr. Maurice Bouquet examined the body of Ramses II. They found an extremely high level of salt in his lungs. Also, they found mud in his mouth and his nose. After an extensive examination, their conclusion was that this pharaoh's death was not natural at all. It was from a sudden, violent drowning, which was highly unusual and fits exactly with the story of Moses. What's even crazier is when scientists carbon dated the body of Ramses II, it matched. Exactly, placing his death right in the 13th century BC. This is exactly when the story of Moses and Pharaoh would have taken place. Perfect match. Also, there's an ancient letter believed to be in the British Museum's ancient papyrus collection, written by a royal scribe named Amenemone. This letter mourns about Pharaoh's sudden death by drowning. This is literally a living miracle we can witness today. You can go and see the body for yourself right now in the Museum of Egyptian Antiques in Cairo.
Now, we turn to Hatshepsut, queen turned pharaoh, and breaker of conventions. She lived, approximately 1504 to 1458 BC on the African land of Egypt. She assumed full kingship about 1473 to 1458 BCE and she became one of the few women to rule Egypt under the full title and authority of Pharaoh. She was daughter of Thutmose I, sister and wife of Thutmose II, and regent for the young Thutmose III, and, through a series of calculated moves, she declared herself king. She always had a male regalia, wore the false beard, had her images carved in masculine style. But this wasn't mere performance, it was statecraft. She needed legitimacy, and in a male-dominated lineage, she found it, by myth-making a divine birth narrative, linking her to Amun. She commissioned massive building projects, like the Grand Temple at Deir el-Bahari, obelisks at Karnak, and trade voyages to Punt. Her trade to the land of Punt brought gold, incense, and exotic animals, and the monuments say triumph. But when you think of the people, shipbuilders, rowers, log cutters climbing cedar trees, transporters burdened with incense crates, the unknown men and women who loaded the boats, watched the waves, held the ropes while storms battered them. Their names unmarked, their wages may be minimal, their health compromised, and their lives compressed into trade expedition. Back in Egypt, the construction of her temple at Deir el-Bahari required large labor forces. Peasants drafted, stone quarried, sawdust in lungs, and clay workers molded statues they would never erect. The temple art shows serenity, but reality had dust, pain, and exhaustion. The truth is simple: triumph has a hidden ledger of human cost. And, politically, Hatshepsut rewrote the rulebook. A female pharaoh navigating a patriarchal order. She controlled the army, the priests, and the treasury. Her reign was relatively peaceful compared to war-driven reigns. She leveraged trade and construction to consolidate legitimacy. For Black African women watching, she stands as proof that power exists for all. But so too the structures pushing back, and indeed pushback came. After her death, her stepson Thutmose III and his officials launched programs to erase her memory. Chiseled her images, removed names from kings' lists. Why? Because a woman ruling as pharaoh disturbed the ideology of kingship. The writing of history was adjusted. For us, the message is clear that power can be exercised, but it also can be erased. And the legacy that lasts is the one you defend. Culturally, her architecture and trade routes point to a model of African agency, asserting mother lineage, leveraging commerce, and building infrastructure. Religion-wise, she aligned with Amun, claimed divine birth, and broke norms. So her legacy is double: a triumph of agency and a warning of how quickly narratives are rewritten.
Let's talk about the pharaoh Hatshepsut, who was one of the very few successful female rulers throughout the Egyptian history. A female ruler who men tried to erase from history. She was the 5th pharaoh of the 18th dynasty of Egypt, and she was the second historically confirmed female pharaoh. She originally was ruling as regent next to her husband, who was the pharaoh at the time. When he died, the pharaohship then was supposed to go to their son, but he was extremely young at the time and could not rule an empire. So she stepped in as regent. Hatshepsut continued to reign because she asserted her lineage as the only daughter of Thutmose I. Family tree gets confusing. Egyptologist Roderick actually explains how this dynamic works. He says it's not as if she could have stepped down when her stepson came of age. Once you took on the attributes of kingship, that was it. You were a god. It's not queen for a day, it's king for all time. It's important to remember that the Egyptian religious state was one, and she was seen as the pharaoh, or the king. Her rule was probably tenuous, the way that she received it, and just based on her gender. So she reinvented herself, and she portrayed herself as a male pharaoh. She also changed her name to Mutkere. She was a very successful pharaoh. She built trade routes, had some incredible archaeological feats. This is just one of hundreds of different builds that she commissioned when she was ruling, and her buildings were said to be more architecturally impressive than those of her Middle Egypt predecessors. While women had relatively high status in ancient Egypt, they could own, inherit, and have the right to property and assets, a woman pharaoh was very rare. We have an inscription from her father's perspective. Then His Majesty said to them, "This daughter of mine, may she live. She shall direct the people in every sphere of this palace. It is she indeed who shall lead you. She, the king of Upper and Lower Egypt, may she live eternally."
Now to Tutankhamun, the boy king. He ascended around age 9 to 10 in about 1333 BC, and died around 1323 BC. His reign was short. But his father Akhenaten had torn apart the religious fabric of Egypt, elevating Aten monotheism, reducing the power of Amun and the priesthood. The society shook, but Tutankhamun changed course. He changed his name from Tutankhaten to Tutankhamun, moving the worship back to Amun. He restored temples and moved the capital from Akhenaten back to Memphis. He issued the restoration stela in his 4th year. So his reign was not about expansion, it was about rebuilding, reclaiming, and re-anchoring. Now think of the human dimension. Imagine a teenage king, surrounded by advisors, priests, and generals. Behind the walls, temple workers resumed labor, artisans adjust to renewed style, peasants resumed the old patterns. For a decade, the people had felt religious revolution, but now they feel restoration. Their identity shaken, their livelihoods fluctuating, and the names of gods changed. For a farmer, this meant new rituals in his village, new priest, new duties. For an artisan, the Amarna style replaced by old forms. For everyday people, it meant change unsettled the known world. Cultural legacy includes the mask of Tutankhamun, gold, visage, and globally famous. But the reign was less about grandeur and more about continuity. The lesson is that legacy may not be loud, may not last centuries of dominance, but the technician in the room, the restorer of order, and the figure who resets the system is as important as the conqueror. For African audiences, sometimes our leadership is not about brand new dominance, but repairing, restoring, healing, and reclaiming. Religious legacy and power returns to temple and priesthood. And, for centuries after, Egypt hires priests, builds cult statues, and strengthens the hold of religious political complex. The theology of the pharaoh remains intact. So for us, religion is inseparable from governance. And until you separate it, you risk repeating the cycle of domination. Do not forget to support us by giving this video a like, because it helps our channel grow and helps us create more solid videos like this. Please share this video so it reaches every African worldwide and subscribe so you never miss any truth they wanted kept hidden. Thank you for watching. See you in the next video.
The story of King Tut and his golden treasures is one of the most famous in the world, but did you know that you can go still see his actual body inside of his tomb in Egypt? Welcome back to our series Archaeology Around the World, and today we're looking at King Tutankhamun's tomb, the story of its discovery, and why it's so different from the other tombs that are in the Valley of the Kings. Tutankhamun, or commonly known as King Tut, ruled in the 18th dynasty in Egypt from around 1332 BCE to 1323 BCE. He ascended the throne when he was only 9 years old and passed away at 19. And although his reign was really short, his story became so famous because of Howard Carter's discovery of his tomb in the Valley of the Kings in 1922. Now, although his tomb isn't the only ever recorded to have been discovered intact, what makes it so famous are the artifacts found in it, as well as the fact that it was located at the heart of the Valley of the Kings. The tomb, today designated KV62 in the Valley of the Kings archaeological site, was discovered on November 4th, 1922 by archaeologist Howard Carter after years of excavating. Now, the main reason that it wasn't discovered by looters was because it was covered in debris from other workmen in later dynasties constructing other tombs in ancient Egypt. So the whole time it sat there in plain sight, but the looters just didn't know it was there. Now, heading back to King Tut's tomb in the Valley of the Kings, you can still see his mummified body on display here today in the tomb. It is really an incredible sight to imagine that that is actually the boy king himself, over 3,000 years later, right in front of you. It really is, it's a one-of-a-kind experience. And of course, they did this out of respect and out of the fact that this was his intended final resting place. There have been some really interesting discoveries that have come out recently that have shed a new light on this room in particular, because there have been 2 new doorways discovered. They are, of course, plastered up, so Howard Carter would have not seen them, and other archaeologists up until today because of new technologies and things like that. And so there are some interesting theories. Some people are saying that maybe Nefertiti, her body, her mummy, as well as all of her grave goods could be somewhere behind one of these walls. Some other people are saying to that fact that maybe this tomb was intended for her rather than Tut, and he of course died first, making it for him. Others are saying that it could have been for someone else entirely and it was just repurposed.